How's it going, guys? Welcome to my brand new football related YouTube channel. I've been wanting to do something like this for a while now, and with the new season coming up, I figured let's just do it. And what better way to start off the new season than by posting my predictions for how the Premier League table will look come the end of the season. Let's get to it. In 20th position and holding up the rest of the table, I'm predicting will be Aston Villa. To be honest, I'm not sure how the Villains managed to survive last season. They were losing games left, right and centre and barely scoring any goals to go with it. It was after a 3-0 defeat in an embarrassing performance against Manchester United that I thought, yeah, these guys are going down. But no, instead they take 8 points from their remaining available 12 and stay up by a single point. And I don't think Bournemouth or Sheffield United fans will need reminding of where that point came from. I'm not expecting any such antics from them this season. Instead, I think we'll be waving them back to the Championship. In 19th position, I'm predicting West Bromwich Albion. West Brom are a weird one. They definitely broke a lot of hearts when they came 10th in the 16-17 season, only to come dead last the season after. Since then, they've shown that they're a strong Championship side, but with the exception of a few Premier League standard players littered throughout their squad, I think that right now, strong Championship side is all they are. Who knows, a 31-year-old Charlie Austin might surprise me and score a 20-plus goal season, but I doubt it. In 18th position and taking that final relegation spot, I'm predicting Newcastle United. I don't like Newcastle that much. They don't play overly attractive football, they don't score a whole lot of goals, they have a nasty habit of beating Chelsea, and about 5 or 6 years ago, when I was in the final five of a last man standing competition, they cost me. So not a whole lot of love going on there. The few players I have that I do enjoy, such as Miguel Almiron and St. Maximin, are wasted in that team. Following the reveal that the takeover by mega-rich Saudis isn't going to happen, I expect that come the end of this season, they'll be saying goodbye to the Premier League, at least for now. Poor Newcastle. First, the takeover doesn't happen, and now they have some Irish YouTuber with 3 subscribers talking shit about them. Doesn't really get worse than that. And they still have Joe Linton playing up front. In 17th position and avoiding relegation, I have Brighton and Hove Albion. Look, I have no doubt in my mind that Brighton are in for a tough season. The teams that I have ranked from maybe 13th to 16th, I do think have a chance to surprise me and finish a good bit above where I have them placed. But not Brighton. They've just about been holding on to their Premier League status ever since they were brought back into the competition, and if they do survive this season, I think it'll be by the smallest of margins, but that's exactly what I'm predicting. In 16th position, I'm predicting Fulham. Fulham, for me, are a Premier League team. It wasn't that long ago that it didn't matter who you were or what kind of form you were in, you didn't want to be playing Fulham, particularly at Craven Cottage. When they were promoted back to the Premier League for the 18-19 season and started signing superstars like Andre Schürrle and John Suri, I'll admit I was excited for them, and I'm sure a lot of their fans were getting excited as well. In the end, they seemed to bite off a bit more than they could chew by trying to assemble this mega team from the off, and they ended up going straight back down to the Championship. I think this time they will have learned from that and they'll focus on just staying up. It'll be a tough season for them, but I reckon that come the start of the final game week, they'll already be safe. In 15th position, I'm predicting Sheffield United. Sheffield have been in dreamland since their promotion to the Premier League. They've gotten results against a lot of the big teams, and for a large chunk of last season, they really threatened to take one of those European spots. They did eventually drop to 9th, but it was still a fantastic season for them. However, I do feel as though their dip in form at the end of the season will carry on into the season coming, and it'll lead them to a bit of a relegation scrap, but it'll be one that, in the end, they'll survive comfortably enough. In 14th position, I'm predicting West Ham United. West Ham with Dimitri Payet in their team were a great team. They played terrific football and they got results to go with it. Since his departure, it hasn't been too great for them. They've tried to replace him with creative players such as Yarmolenko and Felipe Anderson, but it hasn't really worked out for them. I think they're in for a little bit of relegation worry this season, but they'll be comfortable enough, likely due to the teams below them not being too great, rather than through any greatness of their own. In 13th position, I'm predicting Crystal Palace. Palace on their day can go head to head with anyone in this league. Unfortunately for them, their day only happens about twice a season. Still, this team not so long ago survived a start to the season of 7 straight defeats with 0 goals scored, so I'm pretty sure they can survive anything. I reckon they're headed for a fairly uneventful low mid-table finish. In 12th position, I'm predicting Burnley. I'm expecting big things from Burnley this season. I reckon they'll come out and play some terrific football, score lots of goals, and absolutely light this league on fire. No, okay. Burnley are going to do what Burnley do best, which is literally fight for every single point that they can earn. It won't be pretty, but it will be effective, and it'll see them land in mid-table. In 11th position, I'm predicting Southampton. I feel as though a few people, given Southampton's great post-lockdown form, might be surprised that I have them put down as low as 11th. But remember, this is a team that just last year lost 9-0 to Leicester. The only reason I have them placed as high as 11th is because I'm hoping for their sake Danny Ings stays fit. If he gets injured early on, I think Saints fans could end up praying for an 11th place finish. In 10th position, I'm predicting Leeds United. As bold predictions go, this is a bold one. But hear me out. Leeds should probably have been in the Premier League a couple of years ago by now, and they just kept letting it slip from their fingers. I think that now that they are back, they're here to stay and make a big impression while they're at it. With the genius of Marcelo Bielsa leading them, I think that they could make their way into the top half of a fairly clustered mid-table. In 9th position, I'm predicting Everton. I kind of feel bad for Everton. If a Premier League Big Six existed 10 years ago, they most certainly would have been in it. But ever since David Moyes has gone off to sabotage Man United, they've just found themselves slipping and slipping. The thing is, they try to keep themselves in contention with the big teams by often signing players from big teams, but what they don't seem to realise is that if a player is moving from a big team to a mid-table team, it's probably because he's mid-table standard. Of course, there are exceptions to this rule. I, for one, think that Gylfi Sigurdsson and Romelu Lukaku are terrific players, but this rule most certainly does apply Alex Iwobi to some others. I think Everton are headed for another mid-table finish where they don't do much damage at all to the teams above them, but sweep aside the teams below them. In 8th position, I have Leicester, the golden boys of the last half-decade of Premier League football. Look, I don't think anyone needs reminding that what they pulled off in their title-winning season was a beyond ridiculous occurrence. It's probably the reason people weren't too stunned that they spent large amounts of last season in the top 3, which was a fantastic achievement. Still, they did eventually slump to 5th, and I can see that decline continuing a bit into next season and see them finishing a comfortable, if not overly exciting 8th. In 7th position, I'm saying it will be Arsenal, the only Big Six team not to finish in the top 6, and I don't think many people can argue with that. The club has pretty much been in decline ever since the fans got what they wanted and saw their best ever manager sacked. Mikel Arteta has done a pretty okay job since coming in, but a pretty okay job doesn't get you a top 6 finish in the Premier League. Yes, they did win the FA Cup against a half-broken Chelsea side, but to do well over the course of a 38-game season, that squad needs a lot of investment, and it's investment we know they're not going to get. So I see them landing in 7th and no higher. In 6th position, I'm predicting Wolverhampton Wanderers. Wolves have been a breath of fresh air since their return to the Premier League. The last time they were in this competition, they spent season after season clinging on by the skin of their teeth before eventually coming dead last, and that downward spiral continued on and saw them relegated to League One. They then went on to win League One with a record 103 points, threw their weight around in the Championship for a few years before winning that title, and since coming back to the Premier League have had 2 consecutive 7th place finishes. They've had a fairy tale story in Europe, and they've gotten themselves a reputation for being giant killers. Without Europa League fixtures clogging up their schedule this season, I can see them making their way into the top 6. In 5th position and missing out on a Champions League spot, I'm predicting will be Tottenham Hotspur. Jose Mourinho, in my opinion, has done a pretty decent job since taking over as Spurs boss. He's got a squad of talented players that just don't seem to gel that well together. And while it might seem a bit crazy not predicting a Jose Mourinho team to challenge for a title, I think that he's just going to have to accept that this Spurs side does not compare to his superpowers of old. There's certainly no mid-noughties Chelsea. His Inter Milan team were the kings of Europe by the end of that decade, and his Real Madrid team had Ronaldo. I think that they're going to finish 5th, and they won't really put too much pressure on the top 4. In 4th position, I'm predicting Liverpool. I know that this one's going to ruffle some feathers, but we've seen it before. Teams better than this Liverpool one have had spectacular seasons and then gone on to suffer a bit of a hangover the year after. We even see it in the World Cup, where the champions go into the next competition with the same squad and the same footballing philosophy, and they don't do too well. If Liverpool were throwing themselves into the transfer market and strengthening their squad, I would probably be saying something very different, but they aren't. So I'm saying they'll finish 4th. In 3rd position, I'm predicting Chelsea. I mean, clearly I am a Chelsea fan, and at the start of the last season, with no Eden Hazard, no transfer business, and a 4-0 drubbing to Manchester United, I was fearing the worst, and I definitely wasn't the only one. But no, we finished 4th, and we only actually finished behind Manchester United on goal difference. So it mightn't seem like a spectacular jump for us to go from 4th to 3rd, but what I am expecting is a bigger accumulation of points and definitely losing less points against the lower teams. The one issue I'm having is that in the transfer market, we're strengthening our squad in the areas that it was already good in. So I don't see us challenging for the title truly while we still have the same defensive issues. But I think 3rd would be a really good second season for Lampard. In 2nd position, I'm predicting Manchester United. Everyone knows that since signing Bruno, Manchester United have essentially become this unstoppable force of nature. Here's a player that, similar to Mo Salah when Liverpool signed him, was willing to grab the game by the scruff of the neck and inspire his teammates to do the same. If Bruno keeps doing what he does, I think United fans are in for a pretty exciting season. But in terms of winning the title, I'm just not convinced that their previous issues have disappeared. Their lack of defensive competence, their strikers' lack of confidence, and Paul Pogba just often looking like he doesn't care. I reckon at some point in the season, some, if not all of these issues will flare back up, and it'll keep the crown away from Old Trafford for another season. So for first position, that leaves Manchester City. There's no doubt that the 2010s have been the golden age of Man City's 140-year history. But with Vincent Kompany and David Silva moving on, it's clear that their original core group of heroes are getting on in years. The ones that remain, particularly Sergio Aguero, I imagine will be desperate to lead this newer generation to another Premier League trophy before maybe moving on or hanging up his boots. Not to mention, they will be pissed that Liverpool last season has stolen their limelight and cast a pretty big shadow over what was a pretty fantastic season for Man City the year before. At the end of the day, there is no doubt that this Pep Guardiola team is champion standard, and I can see them reclaiming their throne this season. So there you are, lads, my full prediction for the upcoming Premier League season table. Do you agree with where I ranked your team, or do you fancy slitting my throat? Let me know in the comments and stay tuned for more videos.